All right, Amy Rothenberg is a naturopathic physician in private practice. She's a writer, a teacher of complementary and alternative medicine, my favorite type of medicine. She's the author of The Acapella Singer Who Lost Her Voice and Other Stories from Natural Medicine. The collection is a collection of essays and reflections that helps define and exemplify the work of naturopathic medicine and further propel patients, medical colleagues, and policymakers towards a deeper understanding and appreciation of these effective and gentle approaches to healing. This is super important stuff because that's exactly what we can do. Effective and gentle approaches to healing, right? Stuff that people can really take in and make a massive change in their life in a gentle way. And I love that you're putting that out there for the people.
That's what we've been trying to do for the last 35 years. So
yeah.
I do feel like there is much more openness to naturopathic medicine now than ever before. I think people are tired of not feeling well, and people don't want just more drugs. They want to get to the root causes of why they don't feel well. And naturopathic doctors can do so much to help people in that direction.
That's why I'm proud to be one. And I love that you're putting that out there to the public, like so effectively. When we were talking about how to really structure this webinar, we brought up the topic of detoxifying your mind, not just your home, right? Not just what you have in your cabinet, not just the food, but the importance of handling your stress, detoxifying people out of your life that are adding to that everyday stress, because that's going to effectively change our lives too. And I'm so excited to talk to you about this. I guess really from the get-go, how much impact does stress have on your health as a whole?
It's a great question. I just spent the whole day seeing patients, and I pretty much I think I saw 11 people, except for the 2 little kids that I treated today. Every single other person, the idea of and the impact of, and trying to help people figure out what are the things in their lives that are most stressful for them, because we know that the impact is tremendous, and it goes across the cognitive, the emotional, and the physical. For a lot of people, when they're stressed, it's going to make it so they don't think as clearly, their memory is not as good, they're not as creative as they might want to be. And emotionally, being stressed out can cause people to go very much toward irritability or depression or anxiety. And we know that physically, stress is one of the main causes of many of our most chronic and difficult, challenging illnesses, from hypertension to diabetes, to digestive complaints, to skin problems, to sexual dysfunction. I mean, like, there's really no system of the body that is not impacted by stress. And at this moment, where many of us are very concerned about immune function, we know that there's a whole connection between the mind and the nervous system, and the nervous system affects the immune system in every which way. Psychoneuroimmunology, sort of the newest field of the last 20, 30 years, really delineates where and how stress impacts particularly immune function. So for me, one conversation I'm always having with patients is, tell me what the biggest stressors are in your life. I want to hear it. I want to hear it. So today, one woman, it was like in a relationship with a husband who's not that kind. Another person was all about the finances. Another person, the big one, was worrying about the adult children who were like not really launching very well, and and everything in between. And as a physician, there's never judgment, but for me to understand the whole person and make recommendations that are going to be able to work for them in their life, I need to understand what the biggest stressors are. And a lot of patients will say to me, no doctor has ever asked me about that before. But I feel like that's an important part of medicine, an important part of healing, because we can help people by helping them maybe unwind or mitigate some of the largest stressors in their life. Like you had mentioned, toxic people in your life. And everybody's got one or two. And what is our responsibilities, particularly if they're family members, to people who are really toxic? And how long do we continue to allow someone in our life that's just not kind, or is very aggressive or manipulative? And these are things to talk about. I'm also very interested in having people think about what are the things that they can do on a daily basis that help raise their threshold for feeling stress. I'm sure we'll talk a little more about that, but I'm very interested. what are the things that you can do to raise your threshold for feeling stressed and also to help you dissipate the stress that you have. So one idea is getting rid of some of the stressors when possible. Another one is raising your threshold for feeling stressed. And another one is dissipating the stress that you have.
So I love that, but a lot of us out there can identify stress. They go, oh, my boss at work, that's my biggest stressor. My work is a biggest stressor. But I notice a lot of us men, right? We're like, oh, we don't have stress. We're fine, like a little bit every day without knowing that it's truly affecting us. Is there a certain way where we can, is there certain things that we can look for that go, that's a stressor every day of my life. I didn't even know that it was, and that's a major stressor. What are some things we can look for?
I think that the best way to, because a lot of people are so shut down because they're just powering through each day. They have to get the job done. They have to get the kids fed. They have to get the, fill in the blank. And people become further and further away from their feeling selves in order to get through the day. And I think that's particularly true during the pandemic because every day is a different challenge, worse for some people, worse for others, better for others. And I would say that for me, particularly if there's no reason why somebody got that diagnosis or those symptoms, I personally don't believe that symptoms arise out of thin air. I think that there's usually a story. There's usually some kind of medicine, we call it the etiology. What was the trigger that happened that this thing started? And of course, for many people, it's not one thing. It's not one big thing. It's lots of little things that add up that I think can lead to the manifestation of stress, even if people don't define it as stress. But the positive side of that is that small decisions that you make through the day, just very small decisions a person can make through the day can turn us in a positive direction. It's kind of like a very big ship on the ocean. If they're off by 1 degree, it's going to totally change the course. And so my job, I feel, is helping patients think of what are those small decisions I'm making that might help my symptoms, might help me reduce my stress, dissipate the stress I have, and just talking about it. And a lot of times in a first visit, I'm not stressed. I don't have any stress. I got this. But bringing it up and reminding people of the huge role that stress plays in illness, the second time the person comes back for a follow-up visit, they're like, I was thinking about what you said, and actually, and then the story kind of unfolds in that way.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's part of why I asked, because I've had people come in, they go, I'm not stressed, I'm fine. And then we start putting together the puzzle. I'm like, this person's pretty damn stressed. It sounds like, And one thing for stress that blew me away in researching is it is one of the #1 reducers of telomere length. So literally for longevity, before you even get the $250 cream, right? Or get all these treatments, stress is the #1 thing to handle for anti-aging. It's pretty incredible. And we don't talk about that enough.
It's so true. And, all of the things that people can do to help elongate telomeres will also likely help reduce their stress. I mean, it's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Sleeping enough, getting exercise every day. I mean, there's a whole list. So.
Exactly. So in all your years of practice, I know since one of your first patients, I'm sure you guys talked about stress till your last one. Have you found, even through the advent of all of these resources we have, technology and all, are we more stressed than we were back then?
I think we are.
Oh.
I mean, I wouldn't hesitate. I think we are. And I think I have some theories about why that's true. I think technology, although it's amazing and can be incredibly helpful in many ways, the 24/7 news cycle, the 24/7 work cycle, people don't have any more natural rhythms to when it's time for work. It's kind of biblical, time for every season. And when it's time for rest, that's just been kind of wiped out for many people. In addition, there is all kinds of research talking about one of the things that reduces stress is having social connections. And in our time now, in general, people are much more siloed and they're not joining, the bowling league or the church or mosque or what have you. They're not getting involved with the various organizations in their towns. And COVID is not helping that, obviously. But I think that that's something that is really problematic and adds to the stress level by taking away some of the ways we dissipate the stress we have. The other thing is that the way that the geography is working in America now, many people are no longer staying where they were born with their families. And that's an awesome opportunity. People can choose where they want to live, but not having the connection, support, love, encouragement of family on a day-to-day kind of basis. Even though, you're loved, the parents are like 3,000 miles away, who's going to take care of the grandkids? Not having that kind of familial support, I think also adds to the overall stress. And then I think there are lots of other factors. I know Dr. Pizzorno in another one of these installations talked about some of the toxins in the environment. And I think that these are not stresses in the way we're speaking about stress now, but they are definitely a stress on the system. All the chemicals in the water, the air, the food, this stresses us. And so, I talk to my patients a lot about the idea that some stressors you can't control so much. So then what that means is that you have to take even more effort to go out and control the things that you can.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 100%. It's so ironic because we, on paper, are more connected, right? To high school friends, to friends who moved out of town when you were a kid and you can reach them out in Idaho. But really, like you mentioned, the connection of community and feeling like you're part of a community, and then the human touch, the human verbalization, those intangibles are taken away so fast, especially how it is now. But community has been, for me, one of the number one things that I preach for my patients because of what it does for your health.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I mean, I've been known to hop online, sitting with a patient who I ask them, like, what do you do for fun? And they look at me like a deer in headlights. And I'll say, like, what did you used to do for fun? And maybe they were into birding, or maybe they were a runner. I'm like, get online. Is there a running club in your town? Is there a birding club in your town? I mean, people, I think, get sucked into the computer. It's particularly problematic for teenagers. And we know that teen suicide rates related to social media are sort of skyrocketing. That whole FOMO, fear of missing out. You have 1,200 friends on Facebook, but you don't really have a friend.
It's
you
true.
don't hang out with on Friday night. Like, that's a problem. So I think there is more stress, and I think it's also true that there's as people become more wealthy or get motion, it doesn't necessarily lead to more happiness. And it's been shown over and again that if people are not totally impoverished, like, if they're just into the beginning of the middle class, the amount of money more that they have does not make them happier. It just doesn't. And so I think the stressors related to the constant climbing, I think, are part of the problem.
Are we, since you were really started to practice, are we dealing with stress differently too? Do you see us dealing?
Yeah, I think we are, because I think in the past we had more family connections, social connections, less work, more time. Like, I grew up in a Jewish household, and we observed the Sabbath. I mean, what an amazing gift of time. Friday night came, we stopped everything and we came together as a family for a meal. Saturday we didn't work. I mean, now people can work all the time. So I think people are dealing with stress differently now. A lot of people are doing things that cost money. They go to a spa, or they go to a meditation retreat. And, like, I am not criticizing those things. If you like them and you can afford them, go for it. It's awesome. I think that the growth and the revolutionary sort of burgeoning world of mindfulness meditation is a response to people not handling and dealing with stress well. And I think things like mindfulness meditation, which really weren't around as much, through the 80s and 90s, they were starting to be with yoga communities. Certainly TM was kind of big in those days. But now, I have a son who's an assistant coach in the NBA. They are meditating at every practice and before every game. Awesome. I have a daughter who owns a circus school. They do meditation as a group before they start a performance. I mean, it's just, schools are now using meditation. Jails, and prisons are using meditation. And I think it is a newer way of addressing stress. And it's one of those ways of raising one's threshold for feeling stress.
Yeah, it's becoming more in vogue. Like you said, they're doing it in jails, they're doing it in schools, you know, there's influencers taking pictures meditating where you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that pop singer meditated." You know, but the interesting thing is what a really fast and powerful way that practice that you can have to reduce your stress. We see
Totally.
that measures in cortisol and epinephrine. We just immediately.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think also, for me, one of the main gifts of mindfulness meditation, even 5 or 10 minutes a day, it doesn't have to sit for an hour or two. I mean, people do that, but even 5 or 10 minutes a day, it brings you into this moment. So where you're not worried about what came before and you're not anxious about what's in the future. You are in this moment. And, the only thing we can really control is this exact moment. And it's very liberating, especially for people for whom the stress factor and the toxicity of stress has led to a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of irritability. It's one of the ways people can really raise their threshold for feeling stress. And, you know, it it's like any muscle. Like I talk to my patients a lot about exercise, which is another stress reducer we can talk about. But I feel like mindfulness meditation, when practiced, it's another kind of exercise that you do in a way to grow that muscle. And then when you're in a particular situation where you're especially stressed out, you can lean into that skill that you have grown and developed and worked on,
mm,
you know, through other days and through weeks of your life. And I mean, I'll give you an example from my own life personally. I am a breast and ovarian cancer survivor, thriver, from 2014, and I didn't have a port put in. I had my chemotherapy, my blood draws through my vein, and I was fine for the first few months, but after a while, my veins were not that happy, and the gal would come over, usually a gal. I know there are male nurses, but it was usually a gal, phlebotomist, coming to take my blood, and she had to hit that vein, and I basically would go over. I would be very anxious because they missed a lot. Go to the left, go to the right, go through,
oh,
stab. I would go over here and do my alternate nostril breathing, and could just really work that breathing exercise, which would bring me right to the moment. And she would always say to everybody, in the area, "Oh, there, Amy's going to her happy place."
mm,
But the reason it worked for me is that I had been doing that meditation for decades, and I had a real it was like a friend that I could lean into at the
mhm.
moment when I needed it. So I can't say enough good things about mindfulness meditation.
No, no, absolutely not. And like you said, it translates to your waking life. You even deal with stressors much differently. Even
Yes,
in an event like a flat tire, it's a different experience when you are mindful every single day because you're like, well, I have that friend, I have that place that I can just go to and it'll be all right.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it also, when you can get into it in a way that really feeds you, it's an example of self-compassion. And I think one of the things that I talk about with a lot of my patients who are really toxic from the stressors that they haven't been able to process is I talk about, like, the very first step is self-compassion. I talk about the heart. You have physiologically, you have a heart. And this is, we think about like the home of a lot of the emotions, whether it is or not metaphorically. Well, the heart itself has a tremendous and beautiful roadmap of circulation to the heart. And
Mm,
so it nourishes itself and keeps itself working. And, like, to me, that itself is a metaphor. Your heart is nourishing itself, just like you need to come to yourself with self-compassion and patience and forgiveness.
mhm.
And I feel like, at least for me, having a mindfulness meditation practice brings me to that kind of with some intentionality each day.
I love that.
Helpful. It's
Yeah.
helpful.
All right. So that's one. What about some others? Any other top recommendations that you can think about for us
Yes.
to manage our stress levels?
I would say my number one recommendation is kind of connected to the first thing we started talking about, is sit down with yourself and have an honest conversation, and maybe with a friend or a partner or adult, a child of yours or a kid of yours, or your parent, and have an honest conversation. What are the biggest stresses in my life? And then see if there are any that you can actually get rid of mitigate or reduce. I think, you know, in naturopathic medicine, we talk a lot about addressing the root cause. So that's number one. My number two thing about raising threshold for feeling stress is exercise. I am personally an exercise fanatic. I feel, and not everybody is, which I appreciate. I think the hardest thing for me to get patients to do is start moving. If they don't have a history with it, if they don't enjoy it, if they've never found anything they liked. So I start with very young people in my practice. You know, if it's a kid who doesn't seem to like team sports, and they don't have that currency with the other boys in the class, what are we going to do to get this kid moving? It's much easier to start them young, get them hooked on something, get them hooked on the feeling one has of being in their body, moving their body, helps with coordination, mental clarity, all of that. And, you know, I always say to people, aim low, aim long. Like, don't, you know, you don't have to be doing the couch to the 5K. You can walk for 20 minutes a day. You can walk around your apartment if you can't go out because of COVID. You can do jumping jacks. You can take an online yoga class. You know, you can turn on the music and dance in the kitchen with your partner. There are many ways to move. And all of the research now around exercise and movement, it used to be around like an hour a day of something aerobic, you know, most important thing. Now they're saying that people who do that, but nothing else, and sit in front of their computer likely most of the day, are also not really getting the benefit of exercise. Mm-hmm. So if you do have a desk job and you're sitting behind the computer all day, between things, get up, do 5 jumping jacks, do a few squats, go up and down a flight of steps in your apartment building through the day. Give yourself little nibbles, you know, like when we talk about healthy snacks, this is movement snacks. And the other thing I'd say about exercise is I think about exercise in 3 components. One is aerobic, like I'm just talking. The other is in weight bearing, some kind of, you know, either using TheraBands or getting a few weights and learning how to do it safely, especially for people who are at risk for osteoporosis. And then the third part, something that's stretching, like yoga, qigong, tai chi, just those stretches you learned in 8th grade, you know, in a gymnastics class or something. And I feel like when I can get somebody moving and they can taste what it feels like to be moving more and feeling better, you know, people can get addicted to that feeling, hopefully in a good way.
It's an addictive feeling for sure. When you stop working out after you've been working out, you feel it. Conversely, when you get back into working out, you're like, oh God, that's what I needed. I just needed to move a little bit. My energy's so much better. I'm sleeping better. My appetite's better. So powerful, so powerful.
And I think it also, like anything, like what I was talking before, like making small decisions, like to make that small decision to go do 3 laps up and down the take control and make those small positive decisions and choices and actions. It actually improves your discipline around other things. So then when you go into the kitchen, you're less likely to grab that less healthy snack. And when you decide like, okay, I want to watch 1 episode of this show I'm watching, instead of doing like immediately the 2nd and the 3rd, you just do your 1 and then you go to sleep, get a better night's sleep. So
yeah, absolutely. The discipline. So those are really powerful. We know they're evidence-based, they're well documented. It's amazing stuff. What in your practice, and I guess I want the listeners and viewers to understand, in your practice, have you ever had a patient where you made an intervention, you really worked on the stress, and you saw that that's what this patient needed? That's healing. They're reversing symptoms. They're getting better.
I've got many stories in my practice, and I would just say, I also want to add in a vote for finding a hobby.
Oh yeah.
I'll answer your question, but you know, people have gotten away from hobbies. It can be anything, making, you know, a quilt, or building a model airplane, or doing crossword puzzles, or, you know, jigsaw puzzles. Hobbies are good, especially for children, because then they grow up to want and enjoy something where you're spaced out, it doesn't involve, and you're kind of in the zone, it doesn't involve a screen. And then the last thing I just want to say in terms of other big things I think about around stress is the idea of scheduling ahead of time off. Every week, every few weeks, a longer time, you know, every few months if you can, every year. It's very important to replenish, to reboot, to reprioritize. Many of us, you know, have to do the same thing day in, day out. We have less opportunity for that. even within that, we can grab small pieces of time for reflection, reassessment, reprioritization.
Yeah.
I think about one patient in my practice who I've been treating for 30 years. And she came to me as a 25-year-old she was about 4 years into multiple sclerosis. And she had pretty bad MS. She was walking with a cane. She was very young. She felt that her life was over. And we worked together on a number of things that naturopathic doctors do with people who have MS. And we had a very serious conversation around stress. She had come from a very stressful upbringing, very dysfunctional family. She was on a career path that was very challenging. And she and her husband really wanted to have a big family. And in the course of our conversation, over the course of a few months, it wasn't just all in one time, but she decided to jump off that track of her career, an academic career, which is very stressful, and do the work she loved within the field. And she and her partner decided that they were going to have one, if they were so blessed, one child, and that was probably what she could handle. And, it's funny, I see her every, couple times a year for this many years. And she always thanks me. She's like, I know. And first of all, she's still alive. No more cane. She hasn't had an MS symptom in over 20 years. So it's like something like that. It's hard to know, like, how would it have progressed? But I've certainly seen people with MS that have a lot of stress and it's very hard to get better. Mm-hmm. I have another patient in my practice who was recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. She had packed on about 40 pounds in the course of the last 2 years, caretaking an elderly relative. And the stress of that caretaking and not being able to do her own self-care, it was really leading her down a very bad road. Her weight was up, her blood sugars were up, her cholesterol was up, her blood pressure was up. She had metabolic syndrome, and really the beginning stages of diabetes. So we just had to dial it way, way back and help her figure out ways of getting more help with caretaking and reclaiming some of her own needs as okay. Mm-hmm. And caretaking, honestly, for family members is one of the biggest stressors that people have. Our country does not do a great job working with the ill and the elderly, particularly people with chronic disease who are not getting better from it, So that's something that, those are just two cases that come to mind, but pretty much every patient, this comes up with almost every patient.
Yeah. Yeah. The mind body part it's so powerful and incredible. And just to hear that a chronic disease that on paper is incurable, she can be in remission or have no symptoms for 20 years just by making that massive shift in her life.
Yeah. She also did, a very strict diet she stuck with. She does daily yoga, meditation. She is very, very careful about who she has in her circle. She doesn't let everybody in her circle. She got rid of some toxic people. She didn't kill them, but she sidestepped them.
Yeah. But the power of just understanding that you can make these, like you said, small decisions in your life that can even turn into bigger ones, but can really, really add to your overall health. Because if you think about stressors being like a little slow drip every single day, it's going to overflow at some point. Yeah. But she really emptied her cup by going, I'm not doing this job anymore. I'm switching it, and my health is more important than anything right now.
I think what she saw was like, I could do that job. I'm going to be in a wheelchair in like 5 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't say that to her, but she was already thinking that. Mm-hmm. So.
I love that. I love this. This is, again, like the most important part for me, the mind-body connection, the stress, handling that and removing that. Because like I said, we could detox our homes and our offices and our food and even our toothpaste. But like, this is so important. And I'm so happy that we were able to talk about this today. Where can the folks...
One thing I would say, if I may, is that I do have a lot of patients who come to me who are living a very healthy lifestyle and making a lot of good choices. And this is the last horizon for them. This is the last frontier. It should have been the first, perhaps. So, yeah.
But it's the paradigm, right? We're not taught that that's the first frontier, right? First, we got to change our whole diet and we got to start doing all and great, do that. But this should be the first frontier, as you said, because, you may not need to change so much if your stress is under
And a
control.
special word about children. I think children pick up on their parents' actions and much louder than what their parents say. So whatever parents can do to create a home situation that is not stressed, where the kids are not over-programmed, where there is time for fun and play and hobbies and outdoor time, time in nature when possible, adventure. I mean, these are qualities that we can inspire resilience in our kids, because some of these problems that I talked about earlier that are manifestations of stress, we're seeing them in younger and younger people.
For sure.
30-year-old kids with rheumatoid arthritis. I mean, we have a problem here, you know.
Yeah.
So special note to families.
Yeah. And making the time, as you said, like the most important thing for me is knowing that every morning I'm not turning on my phone until I do my rituals. And again, that's where we can do the mindfulness. I can reflect, do journals, gratitude, all these things that are important for me. So then I can go about my day. And when stress comes, I can go, all right, well, stress is here, but I can handle it. I'll go to my happy place. Like you.
And the thing is, you know, if somebody says to me they have no stress, the person has no stress. Basically, they're either so shut down, they're not aware, or they're dead. You know, like to be alive, there are different stressors, whether it's the sun pouring in through the window can be a stress, the mosquito biting you on the leg there, the mother-in-law harping on something. You know, if you're alive, there will be stress. So it's not only a matter of getting rid of the ones that you can. I think the big ones we should try to. The other ones, we have to figure out how to manage and do things that raise, you know, make our cup bigger so we can, doesn't stress us out as much, the same stress.
Exactly.
And that, you know, I know a patient's getting better to me when they come back and they say, you know, I just want you to know that I went home for Christmas. That's usually a big trigger for me. And this year I just floated through Christmas.
Right.
I know that not everybody else in that family changed.
Yeah,
you know?
100%, but they did in their perspective. That's amazing. So, Amy, where can people find you who are just learning about you right now?
Sure, yeah. I practice in Northampton, Massachusetts, and you can find me on the internet, and I have a practice website, and I write a lot. So chances are, if you have a topic of something that you're interested in, if you type in the topic and my name, you'll probably find something.
I can attest to that.
Over the years.
All over the internet. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Rothenberg.
Yeah, thank you. So nice to be with you both.
Amazing convo. All right.
Stay healthy, everybody.